doing something else. So they're going to be making their way. So I want to talk about purpose at the end of this thing. Hopefully, if I can get through this first part rather quickly. So what you have in your hand is basically my cheat sheet. When I talk about unconscious bias, I've created this cheat sheet that not only talks about what bias is, gives you a psychological explanation for how your brain is functioning as it relates to unconscious bias. I also talk about some types of biases. So there's some different types of biases that we all exercise from time to time, and then also talking about the ways in which we can improve. So we're going to jump right into it. Can anybody tell me what bias is? Can anybody give me a definition? Go ahead.
Can you prefer one thing over another, I guess?
Sure. Anybody else got any? Not saying that's wrong. But that's good. Anybody else? Favor? Okay, all right. So basically it's when you favor one group over another, right? Typically in a way that's unfair, all right? So we talk about unconscious bias. That's what we just talked about, favoring somebody, giving somebody preferential treatment unconsciously when you're not even aware of it, okay? Then another definition I like to use when we talk about unconscious bias is telling someone else's story before they tell you their story. All right, I'll give you an example. I go to shake a man's hand, right? And he gives me a soft handshake. With just that bit of detail, what might I assume of this person that I'm shaking their hand? What might I assume because their handshake isn't firm? Not confident. You said weak. What else?
Not a professional.
Not a professional. Okay. What if I told you this? That dude, he recently broke his hand. He's recovering from a severe hand injury. He just got done doing rehab. He's finally out of the brace or whatever. So he can't really get after like he used to be able to get after. So he's shaking my hand to still have some sort of respect. He don't want to give me the fist bump because we're in a professional setting. But he's still trying to give me some sort of professional, presentation. So right there, and not saying I'm pointing you out, but you just told me he's unprofessional. You just told me he's weak. And you just told me he's, what'd you say?
Not confident.
Not confident, but in all actuality, the brother's recovering from a hand injury. So that's how we kind of sometimes tell people's story before they tell us their story. It'd be awesome if everybody had these t-shirts that they wore, right? And when it got cold outside, you could wear a hoodie or something like that. But if you had like something on your shirt that said like, this is my story. This is why I'm showing up the way that I'm showing up. So if I got up this morning and I'm upset, well, this is the narrative. This is the narrative that is influencing my behavior. So I had issues with my parents. This is why I'm showing up this way. I grew up in this type of family structure, right? This is why I'm showing up this way. I'm skittish about these type of people because when I went to this school when I was really young, I got picked on by this group of people. So now that image is in my mind. So every time I see this group of people, I feel some kind of way about them, right? So now you'll see somebody and say, man, that person's militant, that person's upset, that person's his behavior, her behavior, whatever the case may be, but there's a narrative that's attached to the behavior that we don't always get a chance to be made aware of, but we still oftentimes go in on that person regardless of if we know the stories or not. That makes sense? Can everybody agree to this? Is this, or if I've said something that's slightly off, please object. So far so good. All right, real quick. We need, active listening. Yes, yeah, Marv, yeah. You don't want to say amen or anything like that. We're not at church, but. Talk to me. You know what I'm saying? You guys are young adults. I'm an older adult, and let's rap with me. Talk. Let's have some fun. Let's not make it so tense. Now I know sometimes when we talk about diversity training, everybody get tense, right? Everybody's like, oh, here we go. I'm about to get dumped on for about the next hour and a half. I'm about to get dumped on, right? And it ain't about that. This is not about that. This is more so to make us aware of something that we all do. No one is excluded, right? I know there was a thing about privilege or white male privilege or whatever the case may be. Okay, that's something that might make you feel a little skittish if you're a white male. Okay, cool. But this right here, we're all victim of it. We're all victim, but we're all guilty of it, including myself, right? I'm going to tell you about a moment in which I exercised unconscious bias in hopes that I will loosen you guys up. So I live in Ann Arbor. And down the street from me is the VA and U of M Hospital. Those are key points. About 7 years ago, they put in roundabouts. Raise your hand if you know what a roundabout is. Okay, just making sure. I've been in places where I was like, who knows what a roundabout is? And people are like, bro, I don't know. I know what a stop light is, I know what a stop sign is, never seen a roundabout. Now, can you raise your hand if you remember the first time you were driving and you experienced a roundabout? Okay. Raise your hand if it was all good, or raise your hand if it was just smooth sailing. Okay. It was not smooth sailing for me. It was treacherous. It was like, what is going on? I was driving in Brighton, man. I saw about 4 of them. They were like, pow, pow, pow. Yeah, so you know what I'm talking about. So I'm driving. I'm already late. I'm going to do some basketball training or whatever, and I see 4 of them. I don't know when to stop, go, and people automatically think that everybody know what these are, right? So here's my story. Here's my unconscious bias work. So when you're driving in Ann Arbor, a lot of times we all bump into people who can't drive, right? So I'll be driving and I'll see somebody who can't drive. Either they're driving slow, they don't know what's going on, and immediately I'm like, they're either Asian or they're old. They're Asian or they're old, right? Now, I'm glad you got a sense of humor, because when I say that in other venues, it's like, how dare you? Well, here, I'm going to break it down for you. Now look, I told you, the hospital and the VA. There might be an elderly person in that car. Maybe they don't have the support for someone to take them from point A to point B, but they still got to go to their appointment. Maybe it's a veteran, maybe it's somebody with a doctor's appointment, whatever the case may be, they still got to get to their appointment. But they don't have somebody that's, younger, that drives all the time. So they're like, I still got to get from point A to point B, so I'm going to get there. I'm going to drive the speeding limit. I don't know all about this roundabout. I'm going to take my time, make sure I don't crash, make sure I don't hit nobody, make sure I get to my destination. So, although I'm assuming some of that's right? Some of that makes sense. So, even though I'm being biased, and it sounds bad at first, but some of it makes sense. And it's because of the precedent. You're like, well, Marv, tell me about that Asian one. Let's break that one down. I got you. I've never been to Asia, at no part, but I'm assuming that the main mode of transportation is probably public transportation. Trains and maybe public transportation. So now you come from, let's say, the university, medical institution, highly esteemed medical institution. They're pulling people from all over the place, right? And there is a huge concentration of the Asian demographic in Ann Arbor. I know this for a fact. I live there. I've been living there for 18 years. So if you've been taking a train everywhere or taking public transportation, and then you come here and somebody say, oh, you need to get a car. You're like, okay, I can drive. And then you, for the first time, are dealing with people who've been driving for years, years and years and years of traveling. Then on top of, you got this roundabout, you've never seen it before. It could throw you for a loop, right? So although for many years, I'd be like, man, dude, I know I can't wait till I drive. I can't wait till I get alongside this car so I can see who's in it. I'll be saying I told you this way. All right. But anyway, you get it. So sometimes, even though we have biases, they're not all wrong. But we have to make sure that we are exploring their narrative. What's the story? What's the story behind what we're seeing? Because once you understand that story, that's when you can develop a little bit more empathy, a little bit more support, a little bit more compassion for what's going on in front of you. Make sense? Cool? All right. Let's talk about the limbic system. Anybody biology major? Okay, yikes. Anybody psychology major? Okay. I'm going to say some words that I cannot pronounce. All right? Don't kill me. All right? But feel free to be like, yo, Marv, This is how you say that. All right. This is one word that I mess up all the time, and I think I got it, but I may screw it up anyway. Any of you? How many of you have ever heard of the limbic system? Raise your hand. I'm not gonna call on you. I just want to know if you heard it before. All right. So the limbic system is responsible for emotion, long-term memory, and behavior. And by the way, that's on there. I got some notes so I can be a little bit more efficient today, even though I've already kind of like compromised my process. But you can follow this to some degree, and if you don't follow it, it's okay. You can take it with you, but this will help you out long term if you want to know a little bit more about unconscious bias. It's my cheat sheet, but I got some notes right here that help me be a little more efficient. So the limbic system is responsible for emotion, long-term memory, and behavior. All right. The limbic system is also, and this is very key, responsible for rapid brain activity. All right, so my biology people, my psychology people, and my limbic system experts, am I off course yet? No? Good. I saw the thumbs up. My man. It's also the limbic system requires minimal conscious effort to function. Now, I'm going to say that again, and then I'm going to tell you those two things that you really need to pay attention to. So the limbic system is responsible for emotion, long-term memory, and behavior. And then it's also responsible for or associated with rapid brain activity and minimal conscious effort. So that means that something's happening and you don't really have to be conscious of it. And on top of it, it's happening fast, right? So let's talk about how biases are developed. Amygdala. Does anybody know what word I'm actually trying to say, or did I say it correctly? Yes. Oh, I practiced it too. Say it one more time. Every time I'm about to say it, I'm going to point to you and you're going to say it for me. All right? That processes emotion. That part of the brain processes emotion. Let me go back to it. The limbic system is a collection of brain parts. It's a collection of brain parts that help us to develop these biases, right? So, it processes emotions, right? Now, it's also very, very sensitive to fear. This is important, right? It's very, very sensitive to fear. If there's a football game, right? And let's say, what's your favorite drink?
Orange juice.
Orange juice, right? So they got this, your favorite brand of orange juice has a booth out, right? And they got these different types of orange juice, and you love orange juice. And for whatever reason, you go to the football game and you miss the booth. You miss it, right? What's the worst thing that can happen if you missed out on an opportunity to get free samples of your favorite orange juice? What's the worst thing that can happen?
I would have a very, very bad day.
A very, very bad day.
The worst day.
Worst day. Okay, hold on to that question. Hold on to that response, all right? Let's say, for instance, I'm at the football game, right? Let's say it's an early game, so September, where the weather's probably still hot, Saturdays are still hot. August, no. When's your first football game right now? Okay, so it'll be September. That's good. Good PR. Whoever's marketing the football stuff, fantastic job. You guys said that date in unison. So let's say, for instance, you go to the football game, the weather's really hot, and there's a dude out there, and he got on a winter coat, a long winter coat, right? He looking crazy, looking deranged, right? And he let's say he's looking in the crowd. All he doing looking in the crowd. He not even paying attention to the game. All he doing is looking in the crowd, and one of his arms is missing because it's like tucked in his winter coat. Now, if you miss contact with this person, like if you miss out on this person who sounds like somebody who's crazy, what's the worst thing that can happen?
You don't get to know why he's acting so weird.
You don't get to know why he's acting so weird. Okay. Anything else?
Potentially don't get murdered. I don't know. I mean, like.
Yeah. Exactly. That's what I'm aiming for, right? So if I miss out on something dangerous, if I miss out on the signs that lead to something dangerous, I might get hurt, right? That could be a real bad day. Not missing the orange juice, right? What I was wanting you to say is if I miss the free promotion for the orange juice, I just don't get the orange juice. But if there's something dangerous and I miss that, I might get hurt. So what happens is it's processing all these potential triggers. They say we experience about 11 million triggers a day, right? So we're getting all these triggers, all these microaggressions, okay? And so you're seeing all this content that's happening, so your amygdala is, oh, you guys know how to say it too? All right, man. Go jump in the lake, man. I don't even want you to tell me how to say it, man. I've been doing this for like a year and some change, man, and I haven't figured it out. So at this point, I'm quitting. I'm quitting in front of all of you, all right? So at this point, so now what this A word is doing, it's trying to, it wants to capture as many potential threats as possible, right? So it's trying to protect us. So every time that we experience something, right? Every time we experience something, the A word, what it does is it takes that experience, it attracts or attaches an emotion to it, and this sends it down to the hippocampus. What's the hippocampus known for? Long-term memory, right? Sends it down to the long-term memory for storage, and then anytime that we experience something similar to that emotional experience that we have trapped in the hippocampus, it then sends down to the anterior cingulate cortex, which is responsible for producing behavior. Remember we talked about the limbic system being fast and requiring very minimal conscious effort. So what happens is sometimes we see something, we're triggered, and before we can even grab a hold to it, the emotion is produced without us being able to grab a hold of it and figure out if that was actually right or not. Does that make sense? Raise your hand. Not yet. Let me finish out the rest of my sentence. Raise your hand if you've been in the presence of somebody, something, and you reacted before you could actually process what was in front of you in any kind of way. Not necessarily surprise, but like you just responded, and next thing you know, you're like, oh, like, my bad. Raise your hand. Yeah, everybody should be raising their hand. Unless you just some sort of like godly savant and you could just like process everything in front of you. You know what I'm saying? But that happens to all of us. And that's how biases start, right? That's how biases start. So not all of us